Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Monday, September 5th. Over the next few days, we'll continue to have very hot and dry conditions through midweek across the Great Basin. We'll also still have some breezy winds over far northwest and northern Nevada into central and eastern Idaho and Wyoming today, with wind gusts around 30 miles per hour. Also, these breezy winds will continue over parts of the Salmon Chalice in central Idaho on Tuesday, and then we will see some lighter winds going into the middle portion of the week. Relative humidity will still remain in the single digits to low teens region-wide. We will have a few isolated storms in the southern or western side of the Great Basin Monday, Tuesday, but should be very isolated. However, we will see possibly an increase in lightning push further north over parts of northern and western Nevada and also into central Idaho, which will certainly be on the drier side. Looking at some of our smoke products going into today and tomorrow, still continued smoke impacts across much of Idaho going through the next 2 days, both at the surface and aloft. And then if we see any smoke from the Yosemite fire, that could push up into parts of western Nevada. Over the last 24 hours, we've only had very isolated thunderstorms over far southern areas with some light rainfall. And Great Basin fire activity yesterday certainly picked up with a slew of smaller fires, especially over southeast Utah, but also in other areas of the Great Basin with some new large fires up in Idaho. Over the last 7 to 14 days, very dry conditions have continued across the Great Basin, especially over the western and northern half of the region, and certainly fire danger has been responding to that. We have seen significant rises in ERCs region-wide. These ERCs are at or above records for the time of year for Idaho and are now approaching records and the 90th percentile over parts of the northern half of Utah into the northern half of Nevada. But all areas are seeing drying even in the far south. Currently, our 100-hour fuel moisture is critical almost region-wide. The only exception may be in the far southern areas where the moisture is still a little bit higher. Looking at our satellite loop from this morning, strong high pressure continues to dominate the Great Basin. You can see the westerly flow up into the Pacific Northwest and northern Idaho. So right on the fringe of that is where we'll see those breezy winds today across Idaho into northern Nevada. Otherwise, still very dry conditions and hot temperatures near records. Looking at the weather pattern for this afternoon, again, very similar to what we've been seeing, very hot, dry. We do have the high risk continuing for the hot and dry conditions up in Idaho, and also the winds anywhere from the Salmon Chalice and the northern Sawtooth eastward into eastern Idaho and Wyoming for those gusty winds and very dry conditions. Relative humidity will remain in the single digits to teens across the area. And again, you can see where the wind gusts will be strongest today will be mainly from the northern Sawtooth, the eastern side of the Salmon Chalice, eastward across eastern Idaho into Wyoming, where those gusts will be right around 30 miles per hour. Also, breezy winds tail back into northern Nevada, but certainly won't be quite as breezy, most of those gusts in the 20s. Thunderstorms today, you can only see a few little dots here over parts of the southern Sierra Front into southern Nevada and southern Utah. So again, another day of very isolated thunderstorms, but certainly could pop up in those areas. Moving into Tuesday, very similar weather pattern. Again, that ridge still holding strong with the hot and dry high risk for Idaho into Wyoming, and also still some breezy winds up for the Salmon Chalice, so we do have a high risk for winds with those gusts around 30 miles per hour again on Tuesday. Again, continued very low relative humidity during the day and poor overnight recoveries. So again, the daytime RHs, single digits to low teens, and those winds you can see mainly focused on Tuesday up towards the Salmon Chalice, maybe even on the western side, the Payette. Thunderstorms Tuesday, the moisture could push a little bit further north for just, again, very isolated storms, but could see a few buildups or storms up towards Elko, Battle Mountain, again, Sierra Front, but very minimal lightning activity, so very isolated. But again, these areas have been very dry, so certainly something to keep in mind for some potential new starts. As we move into Wednesday, this is where some moisture starts to work its way north and also interact with this trough moving into the Pacific Northwest and northern Idaho. So we are expecting that to be the focus of a little bit more concentrated thunderstorm activity. We do have some high risk in Oregon and also into parts of the Payette and the northern Boise for an increase in lightning potentially. This area could expand for the lightning high risk for central Idaho. It's just something we'll have to watch as we get closer to Wednesday. But certainly any lightning in those areas with how critical fuels have been and our current fire activity would certainly be a concern for new starts, and also the gusty outflow winds with how dry the lower levels are, with certainly affecting either new starts or our existing fires. Looking at the relative humidity Wednesday, still single digits to teens. Wind gusts generally in the 20s, could see some gusts around 30 miles per hour over parts of Idaho as that trough moves into northern Idaho, and also maybe an increase along the Sierra front as well. Thunderstorms, this is really the first day where we'll see a little bit more lightning coverage. Certainly up in Idaho, closer to that low, these storms will be faster moving and generally could produce some very gusty outflow winds. Further south, we also could see an increase in lightning over parts of Nevada into northern and central Nevada and also the Sierra front. So we'll be watching all of these areas as we approach Wednesday for any potential increases in coverage and high risk. Forecast amounts of precipitation, very minimal. These thunderstorms will be, again, isolated, but also on the drier side, so don't expect any widespread wetting rains. As we move into Thursday, this trough swings eastward. We don't have any high risk. Could still see some very dry conditions, obviously, still warm temperatures. We'll have to watch these winds up in central Idaho, but much of the stronger winds will be pushed east into Montana. We do have the tropical feature off the Baja coast, so we'll be watching that for later in the week towards the weekend for potentially pushing moisture into the Great Basin. But until then, Friday still looks very dry, some breezy northwest winds potentially for Idaho. And then as we get into the weekend is where this moisture from the tropical feature in the eastern Pacific will be pushed north into possibly southern and central areas of the Great Basin by Saturday and Sunday. So we could see some widespread thunderstorms, could see certainly some increase in humidity and some wetting rains, even for northern and western Nevada. So we'll be watching this feature and how this moisture evolves over the coming days. And then you can see obviously in our significant fire potential, this would certainly lower fire potential over the southern half of the region, and we'll have to watch how far north that moisture makes it, because we certainly could see some moisture making its way into northern Nevada or even Idaho. 7-day total amounts of precipitation, as you can see, an increase in overall moisture and the potential for wetting rains, especially over the southern half of the Great Basin, closer to that tropical moisture. But we'll continue to watch areas across the region as we could see an increase in moisture further north. The 8 to 14 day outlook, taking us from September 12th through the 18th, shows still wetter conditions over much of the Great Basin. And again, this could be both some tropical moisture and some systems moving in mid to late month. So hopefully that will materialize and we'll have some good news for some of the areas across Idaho into northern and western Nevada that have been exceptionally dry. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.